A catastrophic bushfire burnt through more than half of Queensland's Fraser Island and was looming as an ecological disaster. It's the world's largest sand island. It's also known as Cr. The bushfire was sparked by an illegal campfire in mid-October and burnt through about half the island, which is somewhere between 80 to 85,000 hectares. Councillor George Seymour is Mayor of the Fraser Coast Regional Council, which Fraser Island is part of the umbrella of that regional council. Fraser Island, by the way, is about 123 kilometres or 76 miles long and about 22 kilometres or 14 miles wide. It was inscribed as a World Heritage Site in 1992. George, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, good day, Mike. How are you?
Good. You live in a beautiful part of the world.
It is. It's really, really special place, and Fraser Island's right up there in terms of the incredible environments here on the Fraser Coast.
Just Fraser Island has been in the news for all the wrong reasons. A beautiful island. Just wondering, has there been adequate fire management on the island? Because there's been about 2 months of a wild fire. In the US they call it wildfires. Here we call it bushfires.
Yeah, I don't think there was adequate management. There's going to be a very thorough review by the state government to look at the preparation, the management, and the actual firefight. But I think quite clearly, if you have a fire that burns for 2 months, much of it uncontrollable and unmanaged, and then you're relying on rain to extinguish it, something has gone very, very wrong. It is an incredible natural environment, and over 80,000 hectares was burnt, about half the island of this World Heritage listed natural wonderland. So clearly lessons need to be learned for the future.
I believe as it was coming out that the reason why they didn't use the, as we would say in Australia, the U-Butte water tanker in Bundaberg was because they were hoping for rain. Now, is that stupid or is that just plain nuts?
Well, I think it's negligent. You know, at the end of the firefight, they had sometimes 23 planes in the air. Mm-hmm. They were dropping over 1 million litres of water on the fire by the end, but they could have used a fraction of that, obviously, earlier to extinguish it. So it was monitored and monitored for weeks and weeks. So clearly, you know, this review, I think, will be quite telling in terms of when they engaged with the fire, because it wasn't fought for weeks and weeks. It was allowed to just run.
Why do you think the delay? I mean, it's a World Heritage Site. Queensland and the federal government, they've got to look after it. They've got to make sure this island's going to be around for thousands of years. And we just had, I mean, as you know, the old saying, as Rome burnt, Nero fiddled. Do you think that the election might have been a bit of a distraction, or that the Premier just fiddled and just said, oh, well, it'll go out?
I think it comes down to the management of the park and also the conditions. This fire started in a very, very remote area of the island, some places with no tracks at all, and maybe you can't send men and women down a single sandy track where they could get cut off behind the fire line. So it would have been very dangerous to send people in. But also there's a recognition that fire is an essential part of the Australian environment. Mm-hmm. Places need to burn. The problem with this fire is it burnt uncontrolled and unmanaged. So, every square centimetre of Fraser Island has burnt at some stage in the last 200 years, and it needs it to regenerate. But this fire was extreme in some cases, it was intense, and by allowing it to burn from about 6 weeks before they started fighting it, it was uncontrollable. And when Queensland Parks and Wildlife handed it over to Queensland Fire and Emergency Services, it was accepted that it wouldn't be put out in the absence of rain. So, whilst the island does need fire, the natural environment in Australia needs fire, it needs to be managed and controlled. You need to be able to put it out when you want to.
Can you tell us how the fire started?
Yeah, it was an illegal campfire. An illegal campfire in a very remote part of the island started the fire in early October. Mm-hmm. It was put out, and it didn't get put out until early December.
Have they been brought to account? Have they been charged, or has it just been sort of swept under the sand dune?
As far as I know, that nobody's been charged yet. I certainly hope they are able to find whoever did it, because anybody who can get to the island who's in that remote area knows the rules and knows they shouldn't have had a campfire.
Can you imagine though if they had used a water bomber or aerial attack with the fire services, that small fire would have been put out pretty darn quickly, and to leave it for 6 weeks, I mean, sure, they're opening the Fraser Island at the moment, but half of it's gone. Then you've got to wonder about the nutrients, because they're fungi in the sand that replenishes and helps with nutrients for the scrub to grow. Has that been affected?
Yeah, well, all that will be examined. I think I'll be over on the island later in this week to have a look at some of the areas. I mean, there are areas where I've seen it where it's gone through and it looks like a lunar landscape, and there's other areas where the fire didn't go through with such intensity, like the Valley of the Giants. And you look at it now and it's blooming. You know, there's green, shoots coming out of the ashes. So it's not like half of the island has been scorched. It goes through in a mosaic fashion. Certainly, I think they need to look really close at how they fight fires when they first start, because early October, the 7th or 8th, if they'd sent a few water bombers in then, I think it could have been handled much quicker, obviously, instead of waiting till it threatens townships and built infrastructure. What's important about Fraser Island is what's on the World Heritage Register. It's natural, it's cultural, and it's scientific significance.
You mentioned that the management needs to be looked at. If you were managing the island, how would you change the management?
Well, I think that engage with the Butchell Aboriginal Corporation, who has native title over it, get them to do cool burns in the winter and the dry period. The island should be burnt. When Captain Cook sailed by in May 1770, what he writes in his diary is about multiple fires. The island was managed in a sustainable manner for millennia by the Butchell people, so I'd bring that back. I'd also bring in fire breaks. It was also managed quite well by the commercial loggers. The commercial loggers are no longer there for environmental protection, but when they were there were roads, there was access way, and fires could be put out very quickly. There's
questions to be asked about going back to way back when. And we have, look at the fires throughout Australia. Again, a similar situation, the back burning, which the Aboriginals had done for many, many thousands and thousands of years. And then us white folk decide to get in and say, no, we're going to put our own interpretation on this. And we can see what happens. You've got this magnificent island that we're entrusted to look after, and it starts to burn, and we go, what do we do now? Yeah. So it's a bit sad, isn't it?
The fuel load leading up to this fire on each hectare was enormous. Happy Valley, which was the township that was saved by a group of firefighters, its perimeter had not been burnt for 12 years. So there was no fire break there, which there should be for a township in a remote area like that.
What about the delicate ecosystem and other species that have been affected?
Yeah, I think it's a bit too early to have done a full review of the entire island, but there are people over there right now examining the different sections, the different habitat. It's the only place in the world where there's purebred dingoes. So there's no crossbreeding of the dingoes. So it's incredibly significant habitat for so many different animals. And that'll need to be looked at really, really closely to make sure, we haven't lost too much.
Tell us about the now. That was the then. Thank goodness for Mother Nature to dump a hell of a lot of rain around Queensland, maybe a little too much at the moment, but tell us about the island now, because it has reopened. Still a great ecosystem, still a beautiful place. And again, you are in a magnificent part of Australia and the world. And so here's your elevator pitch to get us going to Fraser Island.
Fraser Island is an incredible place, whether you're staying at Kingfisher Bay Resort and drinking pina coladas by the pool, or the wilderness of the eastern endless sand beach, camping. It is an incredible place to lose yourself in nature. It's the only place, where you have these giant rainforests, growing in sand right up to the beach. So it's an incredibly special place with wilderness, crystal clear lakes and creeks, shipwrecks and Aboriginal culture. So it's an incredible place to be, and it still is incredible. We'll see a rejuvenation, of these places that have been burnt.
And it's so easily accessible. You can fly to the area, you can drive, you could park your car in Hervey Bay or anywhere along the Fraser Coast and get a ferry across. And we're very lucky. And again, thank goodness Mother Nature decided to step in and dump water on it. Otherwise, you and I could be having a conversation of a different nature.
That's right. There was really no way to put the fire out without rain. It's a sand island, so water just leaks in. It was difficult. The water bombing just, hits the tree canopy. So without that rain, that fantastic rain we got in the last few days, the fire could have kept burning past Christmas.
How indicative of Australia. One minute we have bushfires, and next minute we have floods. I mean, aren't you lucky to be a mayor?
That's right. Yeah. We're looking at the flood monitor right now. We've got this tidal inundation in some of our townships. It's a very wild country weather-wise.
Yep, fantastic. Lovely chatting to you, George. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful Christmas, and don't eat too much ham or turkey, but do drink lots of good Australian wine.
That's right. Thanks, Mike.